All right. We are live once again. I'm Craig LeBlanc, founder of the Bitcoin Daily Show with Evan, Captain Sid. He was a guest on Tracy's show I guess it's been a few weeks now. The Friday Bitcoin is Live. Tracy and Hector always find these unbelievable people that have just made incorporated Bitcoin kind of seamlessly into their life and what they're doing and kind of merged it with their life mission. And so I met him on one of those Friday shows. And then I'm actually trying to go visit him in his beautiful country and just take some time to see what the rest of the world looks like and kind of get out of this maybe American echo chamber that I'm in. And so we've been kind of talking offline for a while. And I thought he would be an excellent person to interview just to go deeper and, find out a little bit about, who he is, his journey to where he's at today and kind of where he's going in the future. So with that being said, welcome to the show, Sid. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, I'm doing great. My mom was just here in Thailand for about 10 days and we traveled around for a little while, and she just left yesterday, flew back to the US. So back into the normal swing of things.
Is it her first visit or has she been there several times? Or
second visit now. So she was the first person to visit me after the COVID restrictions lifted in late 2021. And she had to do a PCR test and wait in a hotel for them to tell her that the PCR was negative. And then she was released and basically free to travel from that point onward. But she came for maybe a week back then. And I took her to all the touristy spots in Chiang Mai and just it was Thailand 101. But now that she's seen all that, and my life has evolved quite a bit now. I live in a house with my girlfriend and I'm much more established now. So we did a road trip through northern Thailand and went to some much smaller cities. And then we went to Bangkok for 3 or 4 days just to see some stuff there and enjoy everything the big city has.
And is she ready to move there now, or how does she like it?
Yeah, well, that's the plan. Don't tell her, but that's what I'm pushing for. I'm trying to drag everyone out here.
It's I can imagine. I can't wait to go there myself. It's almost like when I hear you speak about it, and I feel like, and I know you're sitting there right now, I feel like I'm getting my little dose of Thailand just by talking to you. Maybe you can kind of tell our audience, trying to think where you want to start. We could just start maybe in the beginning with your journey and where you came from, kind of your early childhood growing up, and then kind of bring us to what caused you to make the big move.
Yeah, so I guess as far as my childhood, I kind of had a standard suburban American childhood, white picket fence, and I had nothing to complain about as a kid. And my dad is a commercial airline pilot, so I think that gave me the travel bug very young. But I never really spent more than a week or maybe 2 weeks in any foreign country. We would go on a trip and come back. But that was how we used a lot of our holidays, actually, because we would fly standby. So if you think about it, if you fly when everyone else wants to fly to usually internationals where we'd go to some foreign country. If you fly when everyone else is flying, you're not going to get a seat, because the way it works for employees, you get on if there's an open seat. So we would go to very non-traditional destinations at very non-traditional times. Think Vietnam for Thanksgiving, because there's nobody going to Vietnam other than Vietnamese people returning for that week. Everyone is flying within the US going to visit their family and whatnot. So we would take that opportunity to go somewhere very far-fetched. So that, I think, kind of gave me a travel bug very young. And what sort of happened was I was living in New York City, working in tech, in startups. And after a few years of that, I kind of felt like very disillusioned with what I thought that lifestyle was going to be like. I thought I'm going to graduate and work for a startup and get all this freedom and then start my own company and create something really cool and have all this autonomy over what I work on and how I spend my time. And I realized through a couple experiences that tech startups are not like that at all. I watched, originally I wanted to go, weirdly enough, into banking or consulting, like investment banking. And then very quickly I realized it's slavery. it's very high paid slavery, but you're worked like a dog. And I thought, okay, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to be in that industry. Even when you've been doing it for 10 years, you might be making multi six figures, $500,000, but you have no freedom, no autonomy over your life. And that's what I was looking for. I wanted more freedom. And startups to me and technology seemed like a place where I could get that. But then I very quickly realized at least the Silicon Valley venture capital method of raising money and building a company, what I saw was that founders had even less freedom than the bankers, in that they had much less guidance on what they were doing and much less help and cover from others, but the same expectation. They had to grow every quarter. And if they didn't make those numbers go up, they were in trouble with their investors. And it very caught on that this is very much a Ponzi scheme in a lot of ways. You have to grow or you die, because you won't get your next round of funding. And most of these companies are unprofitable for years and years and years before they actually are able to turn a profit on their own and operate as a real business that makes more money than it spends. Usually they're spending more money and they're raising money to fill that gap. So they'll do this for years and years and years. And if they're not able to raise that next round and essentially impress the next group of investors, the whole thing will just implode and will shut down. And so I realized that's not what I want.
How old were you when you figured that out?
That was probably in like 2017, 2018. And that was around the time that I started to understand Bitcoin. And at first it was kind of a technical fascination. I was fascinated with this idea of an uncopyable digital thing, like digital property that couldn't just be copy pasted. And I went down the rabbit hole, but I was reading the white paper and other white papers of shitcoin projects and things, and just interested in this idea of uncopyable digital property. But I was going to meetups as well. I lived in New York City, so I'm going to all these crypto meetups. And quickly I realized the traders have no fucking clue what they're talking about. Like, all they care about is what coin is going to go up. And it was very, very much like gambling. And then I started going to basically the smaller crypto events that were more Bitcoin focused. But at that time, there really wasn't like the concept of a Bitcoin meetup. I didn't have the concept of a pure Bitcoin only meetup. I didn't really know many people that were Bitcoin only. There were a few. I remember the term maxi. Maybe it was later, but I feel like I remember it in 2018. And I remember seeing them on Twitter and thinking, like, it kind of seems closed-minded and small. I was going to ETH events at that time, but I had a similar experience with ETH as I did with the rest of crypto, where I couldn't find anyone who could really explain why this thing was valuable or what value it provided. It was just a lot of word salad and junk. And then it ended up being, well, I'm going to make a bunch of fiat off of doing this. And it was going to Bitcoin 2019 where the first time I met real Bitcoin maxis and real Bitcoiners. And I realized, oh, okay, this is the crowd that I want to be around. They're talking about actual substantive things, about macro trends and the real problems that a blockchain can solve, which are very specific and very small, but impactful, incredibly impactful. I remember Jack Mallers talking about instant settlement with Lightning and how Lightning could be an instant final settlement layer in a way that we've never had before, and how that will have a massive ripple effect throughout economies and across the world and throughout society, and how final settlement works today. And most people don't understand that at all. They think I swipe my credit card and then the person the store I'm in, they just get the money immediately. Well, no, they really actually get the money like 2 months later. There's like so many shell games that are played behind the scenes that we don't see. And so, that kind of stuff breaks down when we have financial crises. But again, it's all shrouded in all this high-minded language. So us normal citizens without a PhD of indoctrination in economics are not allowed to talk about it because we just don't understand it. It's too complex for us. So Mallers really broke that down. It was fascinating.
Just Jack Mallers, was he kind of part of your kind of conversion educational journey, or is that somebody you follow a lot?
Not really, to be honest. I remember that talk in 2019, but I don't feel like he was a major, other than that talk, like a major
Yeah.
figure in kind of how I got into Bitcoin. Andreas Antonopoulos was probably the first one where I
Yeah.
watched a lot of his YouTube talks that were
Mhm.
fantastic. That was like 2016, 2017. And then it was actually a gold bug named Mike Maloney that I watched his series in late 2019, right when I moved to Thailand. His series, Hidden Secrets of Money. It's 10 episodes, each about an hour long. And he walks through basically the history of currency debasements, going all the way back to the Roman Empire and how the Romans would clip coins. They would melt coins down and mix in base metals to debase the currency and do this over decades and centuries, and how that led to the collapse of this massive empire. And that's when it really started to open up for me that Bitcoin is not, money for the internet. It's not a better payment system. It's a complete overhaul in the operating system of our society and economy. And that is huge. That's the biggest thing that I've ever come across. It's so much bigger than any Silicon Valley tech startup that I've ever encountered. It's just mind-bogglingly important.
Yeah. So, how long did this journey take you, like from start to finish, as far as discovering it, maybe coming out of this whole banking, not wanting to be the entrepreneur founder, then you discover Bitcoin? Is that like a 1 or 2 year journey for you to get to where you're at now?
That was kind of like, I would say 2017 to like 2020, 2021, 2022. Kind of, it was 2020 when I had been watching Bitcoiners for about a year. I went to Bitcoin 2019. I felt like these are people that I really get along with and I understand. I read the Bitcoin Standard, I believe, in 2019. Started to click for me more and more that this is important. But it was 2020 and then the inflation in 2021, and seeing how Bitcoiners had just so confidently predicted all of this happening, that they would print a bunch of money, this would lead to inflation. And that really put the nail in the coffin for me. And I feel like I've been deep down the rabbit hole ever since then. So it was probably about 4 or 5 years, because I started really seriously reading about Bitcoin in maybe 2016. But like I said, I didn't really understand why it was valuable. 2019 was a big turning point, and then COVID and post-COVID were massive.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're still in the States at this time, right? And by the way, where did you grow up again? What part of the country? Or you
I
just
grew up
said,
outside Chicago.
okay, in Chicago. And that's
Yeah,
where you
so I
stayed
grew
most
up in
of
the suburbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there from birth until 18, and then I went to Philly for college. I was there for 4 years, and then went to New York for 3. And then it was some point when I was living in New York where something just snapped, and I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like it took me a while to really reflect on why I think I wanted to leave. But to be completely honest, I just had an impulse and I thought, I'm leaving. I don't know where I'm going to go, but I don't want to be in New York. I don't want to be in the US anymore. So my top 3 choices, like sort of the 3 places that I picked, and the strategy I had was I would give a new place 90 days and see if I liked it. And if I didn't like it, I'd move on to my second, third choice. And I had 3 places lined up. The first was Chiang Mai, Thailand. Second was Mexico City. And third was Amsterdam. And obviously, I never made it to 2 and 3. I came to Chiang Mai, fell in love with it. And the
Yeah.
rest is history. I've been here for almost 5 years.
Wow. Wow. So it's 2019 you made that move? Or
Yeah, it was late 2019.
Yeah. And so what was that? I guess because you just grew up traveling and such, it was just you just get on a plane, go, and then just figure it out along the way. Was that kind of how it went?
Yeah, I mean, I get this a lot, mostly from very educated friends from college who have a lot of money and savings and could easily do this, but they say, "Oh, I could never do what you did," and it makes me laugh every time. Because I'm like, all it takes is a plane ticket. I get it
That's
if
all.
you have a family and if you have other factors and people in your life that you've got to think about. That definitely adds complexity to it. But when everything boils down, like literally all you have to do is buy a plane ticket. And especially if you're young and you don't have attachments, all you have to do is buy a plane ticket. And the most you have to lose is a few months of your life while you're testing out a place. And if I really hated Chiang Mai, I would have left before 90 days, but I absolutely loved every minute of it. So I stayed there. And I think there's very little to lose for most people to just try a new place and see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what was it like getting on the plane, getting off? What were some of the first experiences you had? Did you do any, I imagine you did some research before to try to understand the culture a little, or did you just kind of go blind?
Yeah, you know what? I did a little bit of research, and once I got there, like literally from day one, I realized none of this matters. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's Thailand or I think it's really every place. Once you land, the reality on the ground is so much different than what you read online that it's almost not even worth researching, because most of what you find is just going to be, it's just going to lead you astray or stress you out or stop you from making the right decision. Just get there and figure it out once you're there. And that was definitely true for Thailand. I did a little bit of research on visas and all these things, but once I got in Thailand and started talking to people, I realized everything that I researched was pretty much BS. You can't really find the truth out there, which is, it's funny because I grew up like a child of the internet and always Googling things. I was so used to, well, I Googled this. And now my approach is totally different. I ask people. Like I'll usually Google first and not sound like an idiot, but people are your best resource. And that's kind of how I approach being here. I knew one guy from the company I was working for at the time that was in Chiang Mai, and I went to him first. And he showed me the first like jazz bar that I ever went out to and had a beer at in Chiang Mai. He showed me the rental shop for my scooter, the co-working space that got me all of my like first social connections in Chiang Mai, everything through that one guy.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah, it
let's
all happens on the ground.
to stay on that topic a little longer, as far as as I feel like I'm there right now, that I think so much truth is right there on the internet. It's just a matter of me asking the right questions or digging or watching the right YouTube videos. But I have this gut feeling that I'm missing so much by just getting all my information from this one device. Can you kind of try to help us understand the differences for those of us that are still stuck in here, thinking 100% of truth is online for us to discover?
Yeah, I think we're so used to this like interface level way of interacting with the world. And unfortunately, at least for now, most of the interfaces that we use to connect with these things, they're all run by centralized apps for one. So they're feeding you things that you want to see that reinforce your views, that reinforce your idea of your own identity and your way of seeing the world. So you can break out of that. There are, I think YouTube is kind of good at this. YouTube sort of occasionally will throw you a really oddball video that's just not something you would normally watch. But like Facebook is just a total echo chamber. Like you will see what you want to see and what keeps you on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates this filtered view of how you see the outside world. I felt this really strongly during COVID with Twitter, because I had created a Twitter account a long time ago, but I sort of rebranded it and started posting about Bitcoin once I started getting into Bitcoin and realizing this is where all the chatter is about Bitcoin and where I can meet people and stuff. So I started using Twitter maybe in 2019, I think maybe 2018, 2019, I started using it more regularly. But then in 2020, I was watching everything because I had followed mostly Western accounts. I was seeing all this stuff happening in the US and all these riots and violence and hatred. And I had this impression that the US is burning alive.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, that was a tiny, tiny fraction of what was actually happening, but that's what gets amplified. And so that becomes your understanding of the world. And I saw this most clearly when I spoke to Bitcoiners in Prague. I went to BTC Prague. And it's happened when I've spoken to Bitcoiners at lots of events, but that's just the most recent example of it. so many people asked me about Thailand. And a lot of them, they have this assumption that it's dangerous. And that is laughable to me, because this place is so much safer than anywhere I've ever set foot in my life, and way safer than anywhere in the US. And I think, one, that's just like very hard to believe, but two, if you don't know anything about this country, if you've never been here and all you've maybe seen are the news articles that break through to the international media, which is like some foreigner got killed on an island and it's a mystery or something, then when you rack your brain for what is Thailand like, you see beaches, parties, and oh yeah, I remember murder. And so you think, oh, it must be dangerous. And there's also, I think, this American conditioning that like everywhere that isn't as developed and wealthy as America must be dangerous and poor, and everyone's fighting for their life, which is just also laughable and ridiculous. But that it creates that online echo chamber creates these just total misconceptions and reinforces them. And then when everyone around you is also only seeing these places or these things through this lens, that's what they're also going to then reinforce, if that makes sense. So if everyone in the US is only seeing these few news articles about someone got killed in this country, then everyone is going to say, oh yeah, well, I think it's dangerous too. And so it reinforces that understanding of it being dangerous when most of those people have never set foot in the country in question.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it gets really dangerous. You're taking in all this information without really having anyone having any firsthand experience with it.
Right. Well, and if you think about the amount of information that is being created right now in each of our lives, real time, versus the amount that you could consume or have access to via this interface that we have, one is nearly infinite, and one is super finite, and it's very filtered and skewed, like you said, through these centralized organizations. Whereas if you said, okay, what are the life experiences going on at this very moment of 8 billion people, and what's their perspective? And just when I started this Bitcoin Daily show and I start to bring on live people in live conversation, I leave these conversations, I'm like, wow, that was super high quality. I want more. But unless you go into like a conversation like me and you are having right now, or this live stuff, and everything is just like pre-production package, post-production edited, and you only get to see what they want you to see, versus just, I feel like life is live. It's not edited, which is why I love and gravitate towards the live content. I feel like if I want to know, what was that Tommy Boy phrase? You ever saw that old movie Tommy Boy, where he's like, if you want to know what the inside of a cow looks like, you can stick your head up its butt, or you can go ask the butcher. What that was is, it was like, just ask somebody that lives there. Ask somebody, this is what they do. Don't necessarily have to just go read a book or stuff like that is so filtered online now. And this is why I personally am gravitating towards the experiential, the live, the in-person stuff, because I think that's what we're craving. And I'm so glad you brought up that point, because I really haven't thought of it in that way, that there's very limited truth, and the truth has been filtered online. And I think you're right. Like, the general consensus is Thailand is where it's very sketchy. People are just getting abducted and disappearing mysteriously. And someone like yourself that lives there is like, wait a minute, what about the guy that lives there? Let's ask the people, that live there, and see what their opinion is, because that's boots on the ground kind of stuff. So then maybe tell us, what is Thailand really like? Not what we think it's like, but tell us from your personal experiences since you're living there. What does it describe it to us?
I mean, I fell in love with it, so it's going to be very biased. But to me, the first thing that I'll say is, like, I have a very difficult time describing the feeling of that safety point, the feeling that I get from being in an environment where I pretty much know nothing is going to get stolen. I'm not in danger. I'm not in physical danger. No one's going to rob me. No one's going to attack me. That feeling, the best way I have to describe it is that I feel like everywhere I go, I'm in my living room. Imagine if that comfort feeling you have when you're walking around your own living room, you had everywhere you went all the time, 24/7. That's what it feels like. And the amount of like weight that's lifted off my shoulders as a result of not having to deal with that stress is, it's just amazing. I don't really know how to describe it other than you got to come here and live it for yourself and get your own feeling for what that feels like. Thai people are, on the whole, incredibly generous, kind, caring. It leads me to think that this place is like magical because I've had so many just strange encounters that I haven't had in any other place in the world that give me so much like faith in humanity, and just things just tend to like work out here in a way that they don't in other places. Like in the US, your car breaks down or something. I feel like that always, in my experience, had led to worse and worse outcomes. Like one thing just rolls into worse and worse outcomes. Here, it's the opposite. Like your car breaks down and then it ends up being better than you had thought it was going to be. I'll give one experience. This was on my mom's first trip in 2021 to Thailand. We hiked the mountain next to Chiang Mai called Doi Suthep. So I took her on like a 4-hour hike to the top of this mountain. And she told me, I don't want to walk all the way back down. I'm fine hiking up. I don't want to walk all the way back down. So you got to have a plan to get back down. And I had no plan, but I told her, yeah, it's good. We'll get a taxi at the top. I know there's a village up there and they'll be able to take us back down. So we get to the village, we have coffee, and then she's like, so what's the plan? How are we getting back down? And I'm like, let's just walk through the town a little bit. We'll find a taxi. And I'm like, shit, there is no way. There's like no one home in these houses. Like, we're not going to get out of here. And then the last stop in that village was a noodle shop. And I had to go to the bathroom. So I went in there and bought a drink and went to the bathroom. And there was a Thai family in there. And they looked at us and they asked me, like, where is your car? And we're like, we walked up here. And they're like, no, you must have a motorcycle, a car or something. I'm like, no, we hiked up here. And they were so floored that they're laughing their asses off. And they said, we'll take you back down. Come. So we get in their SUV and they drive us back down to the temple where they have taxis. We spent some time at the temple, and then we're waiting for what's called a song tao. It's like a communal truck. And at that spot, they always wait until the truck is full because there's so many tourists coming and going. So we're waiting in the back of the truck. And here comes this family walking past again. And they're like, don't pay for a song tao. Just come. We'll take you down. So they drove us all the way back down for free, and had great conversation. Like that kind of stuff just regularly happens here. It's wild.
Yeah. That's amazing to hear. Where does that come from? I mean, it's so maybe describe the culture as far as their heritage. I'm showing my ignorance. I don't even know the language they speak there, or the predominant religion they have, or even the maybe business climate. Like, can you describe some of those things?
Yeah, a lot of people chalk this up to Buddhism, and I think that's part of it, but there's something deeper in Thai culture as well, because you don't see this in all Buddhist cultures, and you also don't see it, or you also see it in Thais who are not Buddhist. This sort of caring about others, a very like generous and kind attitude towards other people. There's a couple concepts. One is called Greng Jai, which I think that's the right one. Greng Jai is sort of a feeling of not wanting to impose on others. And it's sort of a cultural codification of like, don't get in other people's business. So you find that Thais, in the way that they behave, they're deferential to each other. As long as you're not creating a scene that's really disturbing other people, they mostly won't bother you. And you even see this, like, I remember seeing this in, maybe it was an article or a post or something about a restaurant. And this will strike a lot of Westerners as weird and even wrong. But this restaurant, they had a bunch of customers that came in. I think they said like no smoking on their menu or something. And a bunch of customers came in who are not Thai, and they started smoking in the middle of the restaurant. And nobody said anything. Like none of the customers, none of the staff, because it's in their culture to not, they don't want to impose on somebody else. And their response was to put up more no smoking signs, because in Thai culture, people will see that and they will respect it. And they will respect that this is your space. I'm not going to smoke in here. But then you get people from other cultures that come in that don't operate like that. And they won't stop the activity until someone yells at them. And so that's kind of it's something that takes some time getting used to. And a lot of people don't pick up on it immediately. I definitely didn't pick up on it immediately. It's also kind of nice though, because you don't have the same sort of Karen culture that you have in the US, where people want to get in your business and tell you that what you're doing is wrong.
Mhm.
You kind of have to self-police and know when you're being respectful and disrespectful. And I think a lot of people who are disrespectful of the country and to people, they end up self-selecting and leaving Thailand because they will never really understand it. And they won't understand why people don't like them, but people won't like them. And the people who are respectful, they get to live in a very respectful and nice culture as a result.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, it seems like you hear, I guess, the news or the conception, but then when you ask people about Thailand, if they've been, they never shut up about it. They're like, it's a great experience. So those that have gone there and experienced it are just like raving fans from that moment forward. So y'all are definitely creating a heck of a sales force, shipping them out to the rest of the planet, because nothing beats good experience. I mean, you can't erase that. I actually I've been mentioning to other people, just to a small group. I don't want to let everybody know, but that I'm kind of training or getting ready to go and stuff. And the ones that have been there, they're like, you were going to love it. You're probably never going to come back, kind of stuff. They keep telling me. So
Yeah,
have a
that
good,
is a common experience. I meet people that are like, yeah, I went on a 5-day trip to Thailand. I've been here for 5 years, because they
wow.
just fall in love with it.
And so their language is English. Is that their primary language, or
It's
is it
Thai.
Thai?
Thai is the name of the language. And it's very different from English. They have a completely different character set and written language. It's a tonal language. So there's 5 tones: rising, falling, high, low, and mid-tone.
Mm-hmm.
44 consonants and something like 18 different vowels or vowel combinations. So it's much different in sound and structure and grammatical structure as well to English.
And how long did it take you to kind of find your way in the language, since you were kind of immersed in it?
Yeah, so my language learning, I did it a little bit differently than most people, I think, try to learn Thai, which is most people learn speaking and they pick up some phrases and they talk with people. I did that a little bit in 2019, but once I decided I wanted to live in Thailand and spend at least a couple of years here, I decided to start learning the written language. And I'm so glad I did that, because the written language, it's a phonetic language. So every character sounds exactly as it has one sound, I guess is a way to put it, in every iteration. There's a couple rules for if you see like 2 characters twice, it's a different sound or something, but it's always the same sound. It's not like English where an A and an E and an I can have like different sounds depending on how they're arranged in a word. It's the same sound every time. So once you learn how all of the consonants and the vowels should sound along with all the tones, then it makes speaking much easier and you can speak much more clearly. Because the thing I see with a lot of foreigners is they try to learn the spoken language, but then they hit a wall because they don't understand that what they're saying doesn't make sense to Thai people, because they're trying to map it to an English understanding and an English letter set, but there are sounds in Thai that do not exist in English. There's different vowels and consonants that don't exist. And so they are forever confused because they'll hear one person say a word and the next person say a word, and their mind is trying to map it to English. So they're mapping it differently depending on how different people are saying it. And once I learned the written language, then if I really couldn't understand what a word was, I would ask someone to type it, and then I could see it, and I knew exactly how it's supposed to be pronounced. And that made it so much easier to acquire vocabulary and to really speak clearly. And it actually it got me in a weird place because I can speak very, very clearly, but my vocabulary is still pretty small, and my understanding of the grammatical structure is pretty small. So when I speak, I will say a few things that I know really well, and people will just assume that I'm fluent because I can speak very, very clearly. But I don't, then they start responding to me very quickly and casually as they would talk to another Thai person. And I'm like, oh man, you're talking a little fast for me.
Slow it down. I'm only in third grade.
Yeah, pretty much.
What's the major economy there, of the country, of the area? I mean, I know Bangkok is the big metro, but what is their economy like?
That's a good question. I don't really have like an exact breakdown for you. I know tourism is big, but it's not as big as you would think. I think tourism is like 12 or 15% or something of Thailand. It definitely feels bigger when you're here. There's just so much development in resorts and coffee shops and restaurants and stuff that are catering to tourists. But there's a lot of just other types of industries here. In Bangkok, you have finance and telecoms and all these other big industries. There's quite a lot of manufacturing, actually. I think there's a big Toyota plant that makes Hilux trucks and a couple other trucks. I believe almost all Triumph motorcycles are made in Thailand now. Only the custom, like one-off series are made in England. The rest are all made in Thailand. And also something like 80 or 90% of the carts on commercial airliners, like the food and drink carts, those are made like 30 minutes away from here in a factory in Lamphun in Thailand. Wow. Yeah, by a French company. I can't remember the name, but they employ a lot of French people that then get work visas and come here. So there's like communities of French and European people that work for this company.
Oh, wow. Now, what's the landscape like as far as it mountainous, beaches? Kind of describe the country. How big is Thailand? Is it like the size of California or Texas?
Look that up, actually. Size of Thailand. Because I know it has a high population for
its land size.
Doesn't really help. 200,000 square miles. Let's see what size of Texas is. 696,000 square miles. 268 square miles. 268,000 square miles. Sorry, I was reading kilometers because they switched it. So
size of Texas then.
Yeah, it's a little bit smaller than Texas.
Okay.
20% smaller than Texas.
And what's the terrain look like?
It is mostly flat across the plains and across the northeast, what's called like the Isan region. That's a lot of farming and rice farming and low paddies. The south, sort of like the feet, the south has a lot of mountains kind of going down to Phuket and Koh Samui area, but most people know the islands when they go down south. So you have like Krabi, which is on the mainland, but Krabi connects to a bunch of islands like Koh Phi Phi and Koh Yao Yai and Koh Yao Noi. There's Phuket, it's Phuket, not Phuket. That's one weird thing about Thai is when it's transliterated into English, usually because there's a P, there's a hard P and a soft B in, well, not B, in Thai, they differentiate by putting an H. So PH is actually a hard P. So it's Phuket, not Phuket. They don't have a PH sound. So there's Phuket, there's Koh Samui, Koh Phangan that people might be familiar with, Koh Tao, which has a lot of scuba diving. So when foreigners go down south, they're usually familiar with all the islands and its beaches and beach activities and whatnot. And then up north where I live is all mountains. And you're basically in the geographic foothills of the Himalayas.
Uh,
So the Himalayas kind of slope off into Myanmar and then all the way out to like Laos, pretty much, and Vietnam, if you would still consider that foothills of Himalayas. But it's all mountainous all the way up to the Himalayas, all the way out to, I guess, the South China Sea, really.
right. Now,
So
what made you choose your area versus like the islands and the beaches versus, the northern mountains, kind of where you're at?
So when I came here for the first time, it was in 2016. I came on like a backpacking trip with a bunch of friends, and we went to Koh Samui for a few days, Bangkok for a few days, and Chiang Mai for a few days. And of those three, Chiang Mai stuck out to me as much different. I think the north is generally a slower pace of life. Thai people are nice as it is, but Chiang Mai people are especially courteous and nice. It's a pleasant place to be. In the south, it's a lot hotter for one. All of Thailand is hot, but the south gets really, really hot. And I'm just not that much of a beach person. I much prefer the mountains and what the north provides.
Mhm.
So yeah, there was just something about the vibe of Chiang Mai that I thought this is a nice place to live. To me, it feels like a big village in that you have a lot of amenities of a bigger city, but it's a very low city. There's very few tall buildings, and it has the pace of life of a Thai village, where it's just chiller and more relaxing place to be.
And how maybe about the history? How old is Thailand and the culture, and how long does it go back? And then
Oh,
its current form, how long does that go back?
yeah, I mean, there's Thai history going back thousands of years in
Hmm.
this. There's history of civilization here for thousands of years. The Burmese civilization, the Thai kingdom, the Laotian kingdom, the Vietnamese, all of those ethnic groups have been here for a very long time. And then there's hundreds of other, if not thousands of other ethnic groups in the hills that make up that like foothills of the Himalayas area that I'm talking about that goes all the way up into southern China. There are places in southern China where they speak Thai and their food is very Thai. And their buildings and everything, like if I showed you a picture of that and a Thai village, you would think it's the same village. So these cultures all kind of intermingle all over the place. The the current Thai kingdom is several hundred years old, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but it's pretty old. They're on the 10th king in this lineage in Thailand. And it's been a kingdom. It is a kingdom. It's been a kingdom for a long time. Yeah, so that's sort of like the history of the different governments in
Hmm.
this area. But yeah, there's a very long history of it.
And then how about today, as far as what it's there? How plugged in are the people with? I guess what social media platforms do they use? How's internet, electricity, the industrial side? Is it? Would you consider it more of a developing world, or is it really just a really nice place, but they really got a lot of um, infrastructure built?
Yeah, I think that's one of the misconceptions about Thailand is that the infrastructure is really good. The internet is very fast, never really goes down, and definitely not cell. I've never had a situation where cell went down, and the coverage is pretty good, with the exception of sometimes you're driving through the mountains and you're in like a random mountain pass where there's not really any settlement around and you're in a valley, you'll cut out. But other than that, I always have cell signal and I pay like $15 a month for I think 20 gigabytes, and I never go over that
Yeah.
of like 100 megabytes up and down, which in the US that would cost me at least $100 a month. So the internet is very good. The electricity in the islands, at least, well, this is now years ago. I remember it being spotty on Kopangan, but I don't know, maybe now it's a lot better. I was there in 2021 and never had the power cut. And up here, we lose power maybe once a year in a really bad storm for like an hour. And I remember growing up in the US, we would lose power for way longer all the time. So
Right.
the infrastructure here is surprisingly good. The roads are good. There's a lot of newly paved roads all over the country. There's certainly a lot of potholed and beat up roads and older roads, but I think you get that pretty much everywhere. What else? The hospital system. So there, I kind of have to make a distinction between the public and private. The public services in Thailand do not usually match what you're going to find in a Western country, like public hospitals and public education. But the private services are much cheaper than what you would find in the West and much higher quality. So,
Mm.
like the hospitals here, the private hospitals are very high end. They have great doctors, great service, great nursing. They're really standout hospitals. Like I feel better going there than I did going to a hospital in the US. And the bill is less than what I would pay after insurance in the US to just pay out of pocket. It's
Wow.
really crazy. So there's a lot of medical tourism coming to Thailand as well for that reason, because there's
Yeah,
just, you
I've
can get
heard
really
that.
good service here.
You know, dental work or knee surgeries or stuff like that, that people will travel to
Mhm.
Thailand and other places similar to that because you could get the same $20,000 surgery done for 3 or 4,000 in what seems like a 5-star hotel hospital.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. What so then tell us about the maybe bring us on the journey of the rite of passage, how you got into that, what is that, how can people get involved, kind of the thing that you told us about on the Bitcoin Daily Show with Tracy, and that I'm attempting to try to get over there and do one way or the other.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the rite of passage is a motorcycle trip that I developed in Thailand to show people sort of the experiences that took me through a transformation moving here. Because I feel like being here, as I said at the very beginning of our chat about pursuing freedom, I feel like I've been pursuing personal freedom for a really long time. And moving to Thailand was just a step function in getting there. And so I wanted to take people through the experiences that did that for me, because a lot of them, they're there are things that sort of I had to go through an experience that changed my way of seeing the world and my perspective, and mentally kind of opened me up to being more free. And being here, I maybe just getting older, I've had this realization that to me, freedom is most people are not free because of the limitations they place on themselves, not because of some external issue that they have or some external blocker. But people are so focused on that. They think, well, if only my politician was in charge, or if only my boss gave me a raise or something. And they kind of externalize all these things and say, I don't have the life that I want because of all these things. And it's sort of a victim mindset. And we've seen so much of that victim mindset, especially in the US, but in the West in general. And coming here, I used to have that as well, just thinking, well, I don't really have agency over my own life. And I sort of took that back being here. And there's several experiences I went through to get that sense back. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to create a trip because motorcycles are a big part of it. And then all these things that we go to, part of this freedom. And I wanted to show people that, especially like the hill tribes that live in these hills that form the foothills in the Himalayas. These hill tribes, to me, they are the best example we have of people living sovereign. Like so many people LARP about being sovereign on Twitter and whatnot, or how much Bitcoin they have on their hardware wallet, and they're so sovereign. But these people never lived in a state. Like it is in their culture to live completely self-reliant in small communities. And there's so much we can learn from that.
Yeah.
And so I take people to a very small, there's a lot of hill tribes that unfortunately have gotten wrecked by tourism and are now completely dependent on tourist money. And they've lost that traditional way of life. But there are a few that I'm connected with that are still very sovereign in how they act and think, but they're not open to tourists.
Mm.
So I have this unique access to talk to them because they know who I am. They I have a way into them that they know I'm not coming to take from them, or to influence them. I want to learn from them. And so we get access to those kind of people and experiences. And that's kind of where the rite of passage came from. Yeah.
What are some of the lessons that you've learned from them as far as that living that sovereign lifestyle, never being part of a state? What's kind of hidden back there that you'd like to maybe share that maybe we don't ever see?
Yeah. I think a big one is just that belief in yourself and your own abilities, and in your ability to, especially to figure things out on the fly. Like I remember one of the first times I met one of these hill tribes, this was a secondhand story from a friend of mine that spent the day with them before I arrived. And he said that they went hunting in the woods and got some meat. They killed like a rice paddy crane and cooked it. And they asked these two boys from the tribe, like, do you go to school? Do you study? And they looked around confused, and they're like, this is our school. We learn from the jungle. We learn from the reality around us. And that's like a mindset that we've lost, especially in the West. We think that we have to go get a degree. We have to go to some accredited school to learn something, but you are learning all the time from everything around you. And we would do well to remember that all the time. Like we can learn something from every situation and from everyone, and that's how they act. Every success and every failure, they are learning from and iterating on. And I don't feel like we really embrace that anymore as a culture.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a great conversation with Daniel, the Bitcoin Gandalf or BTC Gandalf. I don't know if you've seen his personality, but he has spent like 3 years on Twitter learning the platform, understanding how it works and all the little nuances. And now he's building a business to help build commercial brands on it. But it's funny how when you actually get out into the world to try to build something, you really have to figure it out. You're in charge of your own education and teaching yourself what you need real time as you need it. And to try to predict the things you're going to need to know decades out, it's almost laughable. And I think these kids kind of you find in the jungle, they get it pretty quickly, but we're like, wait, you mean where's your license to do that? Where's your form? Did you get permission?
Yeah.
Can we do that in these hours? It's almost like we're such permission seeking population here. And I hated that growing up. So I did not fit well in this system at all. I think that's why I gravitated to Bitcoin and entrepreneurship, and where I could just find the most freedom possible. But gosh, sometimes I wish I was born next to those guys that you're talking about up in the hills and then the jungles. I think I would have fit in a lot better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think most of it is just being able to claim your own identity and being okay with it, and then just living life and not feeling like you have to fit in some type of stereotypical way of life from school to work to retirement kind of thing. And that really is what attracts me. Like when I heard your story and I started learning more about Thai culture, I'm like, yep, sounds like a whole people that I want to meet. What's the experience you get from others? And I know because do you have a number in your head as far as how many people you've brought to Thailand from America? Is it like
boy.
50 people, or since you've started this?
No. And so I only did one trip last year. There's been one like official rite of passage I've done. But Slim came out here, Texas Slim came out here with his son, and he sort of inspired me to do the actual trip. So I took him and his son out for a couple-day motorcycle trips, similar to what we did on the rite of passage, taking my dad on trips out here. So random people that have come to visit. I've become like the Bitcoiner in Chiang Mai now, that I get a lot of messages when somebody is coming to visit. They're like, hey, you got to talk to this guy, Sid, that lives in Chiang Mai. So I get a lot of introductions of Bitcoiners that come. I'm now the ambassador for Chiang Mai on Setlantis, which is a Nostr product.
Yeah,
so I'm setting up their page.
Well,
nice.
But Jason, Jason, he's
Right. I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason's great. I met Jason at the Chattanooga meetup in 2022. And I was like, oh, I recognize this name. Yeah.
That's his meetup.
Yeah.
We'll be at the table for 3 or 4 days, the meetup, the in-person meetup table in Nashville coming up next week.
Oh, nice. You got to sign the saddlebag. The Bitcoin, one of the Bitcoin Tour saddlebags will be there.
Yeah, so I saw that. They said Sid's saddlebag yesterday on a Telegram group. So, and then I told him I'm interviewing Sid tomorrow. So it's crazy how we all kind of mesh together. So how is the Bitcoin culture there? Is it kind of new? I mean, I guess it's new everywhere. We get in these echo chambers, but then when you step out into the real world, you realize you're the only Bitcoiner in your city, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, Thailand is an interesting case in that it feels like where we were 4 or 5 years ago in the US, where it's still just like crypto and people are looking at it as an investment and kind of buying everything. But it does feel like there's a tone change in Thailand over the last maybe year, because among Thais, there's definitely a much more recent experience with and understanding of hard money. So they had a currency crisis in like 1991, maybe. I want to say like the early 1990s, where there's a massive overnight devaluation. The people here are under no sort of impression that, you know, the banking system is working for them. And it kind of comes out in gold. That's what people for thousands of years, like everywhere, have gone to. But gold is a big thing here. There are gold shops on every corner. Gold is, you know, everyone has it written, the price on the door that they buy and sell at, and people are buying and selling gold all the time. And that's sort of like a savings account, is to hold gold.
Yeah.
So that's well understood. The idea of getting out of fiat and holding hard money is very well understood.
Wow, that's a great point for any population.
Yeah, I wish a great starting point. That's the thing that we miss. Like in America, we have all the resources and the education, because we also forget that all this information that's being created about Bitcoin most of it is in English. You know, I know there's actually, I think the biggest Bitcoin channel with the most views is actually a German channel, and Swan Bitcoin is number 2. So there's other places and other, you know, languages that are very popular, but Thai is not one of them. There's not that much in Thai. There's not that many creators creating Bitcoin content in Thai. I've seen some of them. There's a big company now called RightShift that has a long history. The founder of RightShift, his dad started a trading channel in Thailand. I don't know how many years ago, but it's an old channel on YouTube that's put out tons and tons of videos. And he has a big community of people that were like stock day traders, basically, that would listen to him for day trading advice. And his son went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And now his son started this company, RightShift, that is basically Bitcoin education in Thai. So they do podcasts and he does one-off riffs. He translated the Bitcoin standard and the fiat standard into Thai. Those are now very popular. I saw in a major Thai bookstore, the Bitcoin standard, I think, is number 2 most popular book in their store. And the fiat standard is number 5. So people are starting to read and really start to understand what this is, but it's just a lag. It takes time for it to become popular and to break through into a different language. You know, and I'm thankful for people like Kun Puriya, who started RightShift, because he's really leading and not waiting for, you know, he did those translations, but he's also doing interviews with Thai people and Thai miners and stuff, and creating a lot of content. And that is definitely bringing people in. Yeah. There's a Bitcoin conference now in Bangkok. There was one last year that I think they set out to have like 200 or 300 tickets, and they sold out in like an hour. And then they had to open up more and more tickets, and they opened like, I don't know, 5 or 6 more tranches of 100 tickets, and they all sold out. So there was like 800 people there. It was massive, way bigger than I think they expected. And this year is going to be more like, I think 800 to 1,000 people. And most of them were like middle-aged Thai people that just want to know what Bitcoin is. And they were not there to shitcoin and day trade. They really wanted to understand how does mining work and nodes and all this more technical stuff. So that is really cool to see.
I think there is a AI technology that's coming out that can translate this very conversation me and you are having into any language. I saw this probably about 3 or 4 months ago. BTC Sessions was doing something with Jeff Booth, and somebody was telling BTC Sessions that he really liked his video in Russian. Had no idea he spoke Russian. He's like, I don't speak Russian. But the way it wasn't just the sound, his lips and everything were all digitally reconstructed so that when he was speaking, it looked like he was speaking the language, but he was speaking English. And so maybe me and you can make some Thai content here to figure that out, because I would love to start bringing more Bitcoin content, live content like this, and highlighting people's experiences, but also getting outside of this English bubble that we're in, and bringing this information globally. What as far as like the platforms that you see used there, is it Twitter? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Or what's popular?
Pretty much everything that is in the West. It's kind of similar. Like there's a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of people on Facebook, TikTok. Two things of note is there's a pretty big Thai community on Nostr. I don't know how this started, but like the hashtag Siamster, SIAMSTR, is pretty big. Like I see that usually on, forget which one I was looking at, which client, but they have like a list of popular hashtags, and it's one of the top, like it was like the 10th or 15th most popular hashtag on that client. So there's a lot of people on Nostr, and Facebook is also interesting in that Facebook is sort of like the equivalent of having a website for a business in the US. So when we think about in the US, if you have a plumbing business or something, I don't know when this shift sort of happened, but now it's kind of obvious that you would have a website. You got to have a website with your name and your phone number and a contact form and stuff. That's just par for the course if you have any kind of business in the US. In Thailand, some businesses will have websites, but the vast majority will just have Facebook pages. And Facebook is then, it's become like a center of where activity happens. So like, for instance, when my girlfriend wants to plan a trip, she will go to Facebook groups and find like Thai travel to Japan Facebook groups that have 20, 30,000 people in them. And there's people in there posting about my experience going to this site and the trains to take and the total cost and the things to see and all that, in the same way that I would Google things to do in Japan and read somebody's blog post that would have similar information. That stuff is more held within groups. And it might just be because of web hosting, because like $20 a month for an American, it's not that bad. For web hosting for a Thai, that's a much bigger portion of what they're earning. So it's easier to just do it on a free platform. Not exactly sure why it exists like that, but for better or for worse, that's sort of what how the landscape has evolved. Like they use Facebook a lot for a lot of very utilitarian means.
I saw that in the Philippines. I had 19 Filipinos that worked for me for my manufacturing company, and they were all in the Facebook, like on a whole nother level. And they just use it so much in their daily lives. So I didn't know how much they were on X or Twitter. Is that something is because I don't know if it's as censored over there as it is in some other countries, or what the police state is like. I feel like here there's so many different police forces, whether it's local, state, federal agencies that are making sure you're playing by all the right rules, whether you're in business or doing anything at all. Is there a lot of that oversight over there, or is it just a much smaller government, or people are somewhat just left alone and left to be peaceful, or what's the culture like over there as far as the ruling bodies?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's as policed as like the outside world maybe thinks it is. It's not like China where there's sensors up and they're taking down posts and whatnot. You don't really see that quite as much. My general understanding of how it works here is like most people are left to do whatever they want. You know, there's definitely like there's less, I would say, tolerance for speaking out against the king, especially speaking out against the ruling government than there is in like a Western democracy. But there's also like less, I don't know, it seems like less policing of that. Like unless you're a big target, they they don't really pay much attention to you. And that's sort of true across the board. It's kind of weird, like for food, for example, like you can start a stand selling fried chicken on the side of the road here, and the hurdles you have to jump through are a lot lower than in the US. Like I know a guy that started a donut restaurant, and he was from like concept to opening the door and selling his first donut was 6 months. He said building the shop was like a 3-4 week thing. The health inspections are like, yeah, whatever, sign done. It's very simple to get started. And in the West, you have all these barriers, especially at that lower level. If you just want to do something small and simple, there's so many permits and bullshit you have to go through that it doesn't even make sense to have a small business unless it's of a certain size, because you can get through all that bullshit and requirements and whatnot. But then the flip side of that is like in the US, if you have a very big business, you don't really have as many limits. Like, yes, you do kind of have to play the political lobbying game and whatnot, depending on what industry you're in. But in Thailand, like if you threaten the big businesses that like the people in power make a lot of money off of, then you have to start playing the game differently and paying the right people and like, you know, doing underhanded things to keep going. That's my read on it, but I don't know. I don't have a business here yet.
Right. So where can people learn more about, how to get involved with you or how to take the rite of passage? Do you have a website or just here on X or what do you recommend?
Yeah, just go to riteofpassage.live. I'll put it in the little headline. But you can follow me, Captain Sid, on X as well. And yeah, all the trips are at riteofpassage.live.
Yeah. I can't wait till I can attend mine. I may end up just going out there to visit before, but we'll see. This year is just turning
come out and spend a little while.
That's right. Well, I'd love to I want to look into trying to create some content in a different language using an AI tool, and maybe we can experiment with that and try to get some more Thai content and Bitcoin content in y'all's language and stuff. That might be neat. Maybe it'll be a flop.
Cool.
A fun mistake.
We'll put it on Nostr.
Yeah, that's right. We'll put it on Nostr. I still have to get more involved in Nostr. I think I from a philosophical standpoint, it's like, yes, I need to head that direction. But from a putting in the proof of work standpoint, I've got a lot of work to do.
I think once you set up your relays and you get a client that you like, it's pretty simple. I've liked Primal a lot on the phone.
Yeah.
On my iPhone, the Primal has been super, super easy and the closest I've had to like a centralized social media experience where it just loads and you can use it, especially with the zaps, because there's a built-in Lightning wallet on there, which I think uses Strike in the background. So you just hit the button and it zaps. And you don't have to do it like on the web browser.
I'll have to get with you offline and you can show me how to do all that. And then we can maybe do a little class and teach people how to do it.
Maybe that'd be cool.
People on it. But well, man, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I want to do this again, maybe in a couple months, or I got to get through this convention. Once I get through with that, I'll kind of land and then figure out. I want to do more and more of these interviews. I love this live content, and I love what you said about, stop trying to seek so much truth online through this user interface, and get out into the world and kind of discover it for yourself, and go to an in-person stuff, even if it's not Bitcoin related. Just go out into the live world, live
Yeah.
meet people.
Life is lived live, don't watch it through a screen. Try to do that less.
Yes.
And I'm saying this as much to myself as to everyone else. But
yes.
yeah,
Yes.
go out
We
and
are
live
all
your life.
struggling here with that. You're not the only one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Definitely.
well, I appreciate your time, man. Thanks a lot. And we'll be in touch. I hope you see you. Come on the shows anytime. I know the time difference is a little off, but love to have you anytime you can swing by.
Yeah. Thanks, Craig. I appreciate it. This is really fun.
Yep. Thanks. Take care.
All right, man. Peace.
Bye. All right. That was Sid over in Thailand, one of our Bitcoiners that's doing some great work. He's, as he said, from Chicago and New York, and just something clicked, and then he just made the move and has was there. It was only intended to go there for 90 days, and now he's been there for 5 years. Love his story. If you ever want to go to Thailand, obviously look him up. He's got an event where you ride motorcycles or scooters all throughout the country. But even if you're not, just reach out to him and he can help guide you in the right direction. Love stories like this. And guys, if there's anybody like Sid that you've discovered, please reach out to me in the DMs on X. I love highlighting these kind of stories. This is the kind of content I want to get out. I want to interview these people. And I'm so glad that Sid brought up that, we think we can find so much truth online and so much truth. But so much of that is filtered and edited and censored. And this is why I feel like my heart or my mind is really pushing me more towards live content, video interviews. The Bitcoin Daily is just a live stage where anyone can come online and ask questions, contribute to the conversation, meet people, and it's not edited. It's real time. And if you don't believe me, if you stay on there long enough, we all get booted, the system crashes, and live you see us scrambling behind the scenes trying to fix it. With the Bitcoin Daily, there's a lot of people behind the scenes doing such great and hard work, producing 2 hours of content every day for approaching 270, 280 days. And if you'd like to meet a lot of us, we will be in Nashville. Most of the hosts will be at the Nashville convention. I will be hanging out with Kendall and a few others at the in-person meetup organizers table. We're also meeting. Brad is our president. He's doing a great job, and he's the owner of Miner Mastery. So if you're into mining at all, try to look up Brad under Miner Mastery. He is typically the host account running all the Bitcoin Daily shows, even though we try to divvy that up among some of the other founders and co-founders. But him and Macro just are a wealth of knowledge when it comes to Bitcoin mining, and they have kind of like an event there. But it's like a Wednesday thing. But as the event starts Thursday, Friday, Saturday, me and a lot of the hosts will just be walking around. So please, if you see any of us, introduce yourself. Let us know what we can do better in the show. If there's anyone you'd like to see me interview one-on-one, or if you just want to bring them on any of the daily shows, please let me know, and we'll put them on the schedule. But thank y'all so much for listening in today. Sid, thank you so much for your story. I can't wait to see your whole life unfold, and we get to just kind of live like we're vicariously through you in Thailand, and hopefully maybe we can go visit the real Captain Sid in Thailand. But y'all have an awesome day. Love you guys, and let's go stack some sats. Bye.